Welcome, beautiful mamas and grandmothers. It's so good to be with you in this lovely Influence Church this morning. I am Juleen Jackson, the National Vice President over Cottage Meetings for Moms for America, where it's an organization that believes that liberty begins at home. I'm a wife and a mother of 7 children, 2 little sons lost in infancy, but we have 5 very wild and alive children here on earth, ages 26 on down to 13. We live in a suburb of Washington, D.C., just about 15 minutes from the White House. We have a married daughter who's 26, getting ready to go to law school. We have a 23-year-old son who's in the NBA. I'm still trying to figure out how that happened. We've got a daughter in college, another son in high school, and the baby is in middle school. So I understand full well that fierce mama bear intuition that rises up when she feels the future of her children are at stake. This morning, I want to share with you the power of cottage meetings. What are they? What are their impact? It has been said that 10 small discussion groups in a community will do more to create a new way of life than 100 mass meetings with thousands in attendance at each. I have seen this firsthand as I have taught or attended cottage meetings for the last 13 years. Now, a cottage meeting is like a study group of mamas coming together to learn, to share experiences, to teach one another. We laugh, we cry, we pray. The Spirit of God is always there. Cottage meetings transformed me as a mother. It changed my marriage. It changed the way that I taught my children, and it impacted my community and the state and even the nation in a way that I could have never imagined. Mamas are looking for solutions, and you're beginning to understand the best way to heal this nation is to start by healing our homes. When mama learns the stories and miracles of America, it will be the most natural thing in the world to then go home and to teach her children and those that she loves the most. And this is exactly what I began to do when I began to attend cottage meetings in my neighborhood 13 years ago. Now, at the time, we had the 5 kids. The oldest was in high school. We had on down to a toddler. And we were living along the Columbia River and Hood River, Oregon, a small progressive town. And we were worried about what our children were being taught in school. Kind of sounds familiar to today. Very aggressive sex education curriculum in their history classes, this notion of the global citizenship and the deviancy of our founding fathers and capitalism. And one mama in that community one day was watching Glenn Beck. I didn't even know who Glenn Beck was 13 years ago. And Glenn Beck held up this book called The 5,000-Year Leap. And he said, mamas, you got to start reading this book. Gather together in a book group and learn these principles and then go home and teach them to your children. 27 principles that changed America. So this is what that mama did. She put out the clarion call, and about 6 of us ladies began to meet once a month for 2 hours, and we'd go through a couple principles a month. And inevitably, we went home and we began to teach our children. Some of the mamas would teach them over the dinner table. Some would teach them before they'd put the kids to bed. I began to weave in these principles of liberty in the morning devotional that me and my husband had since our kids were little, where we would read a Bible story, we'd teach them a little poem, we'd sing a song, we'd say a prayer, and then we'd get them off to school. So the kids, we'd been doing that. And I did that because that's what I saw my mama do in my home. That's how I was raised. Now, when I began to weave in these principles of liberty and these stories of America, I knew my husband was looking at me like, well, are you turning into a right-wing nut, Juleen? But what happened is we all began to learn together, and it sparked something in my man's heart. And it would be the impetus, he would say a few years later, he would go on to run for the Utah State Senate and win. And I've heard him say it was what my wife learned in that cottage meeting that she brought home and began to teach to our children is what lit the fire in him to do what he went on to do. So when we moved to Utah, I started a cottage meeting in my new neighborhood. And would you know those ladies 10 years later are still meeting? They meet every week. They call themselves the Sisters of Liberty. I mean, if you're going to start a little group, give yourself a cool name, I say. Those cottage meetings have changed those women's life. One went on to host a radio show. One wrote a book. Many of them brought their kids home and homeschooled. Some ran for office. Some held office. They're community leaders. One gives patriotic tours around the country. I mean, we were just mamas. We weren't constitutional scholars. We weren't historians, but we loved America and we were worried about our children and we're seeking the heavens for help. And over the course of 10 years, as they came together and studied and learned these principles, God put into each and every one of them individually different ideas in which ways they could be a part of the solution in their homes and their communities. So while I was doing this in my little neighborhood, Kimberly Fletcher, our president of Moms for America, I think you were living in Hawaii at the time, and she calls me and she's like, I hear you're doing cottage meetings. And she asked me if I would help oversee the Cottage Meeting Project around the country. And I did what every mama does when someone asks you to take on a new assignment. Oh, I don't think so. I'm so sorry. Thank you so much, but I'm too busy. But as I listened to her explain to me what she was trying to do around the country, I knew it worked because I was doing it in my own neighborhood. And so God pricked my heart and I agreed, and he expanded my capacity to do one more thing. And now I've been involved with Moms for America for over 10 years, and I love and adore this group of women. It's been my privilege to be able to teach an online cottage meeting for the last year. Last year with COVID, we went online and I taught all 12 introductory lessons in this cottage meeting resource guide. And it teaches you step by step how to start a cottage meeting. You can meet in your homes, you could rotate through the different women who are in the group, you can meet in a church, you can meet in a park, you can meet once a month, you can meet once a week, whatever the needs of the women are in your little neighborhood. So there's 12 introductory lessons. The first one is entitled Anchored in Hope. When Mama is anchored in hope, everyone around her will be anchored in hope. There's no place like home. Ladies first, you educate the woman, the man will be educated. How to teach your children the foundation of faith, the valor of virtue, the power of patriotism. There's a wonderful story, a lesson in here called America, Share the Story, and it's how you teach your children to love America through stories. This book is chock full of quotes and videos and scriptures and stories, and it will be one of the best resources. For so many years during morning devotional, I'd pull it on my leg with my pajamas and I would teach my kids right out of this resource guide. I love the stories in here. As my kids now are adults, they've come back to me and told me, Mom, those stories you told in the morning devotional made a difference. My oldest girl a few years ago served a church mission along the Amazon River in Iquitos, Peru, and she signed up for 18 months. And for 18 months, she would teach the gospel of Jesus Christ to the poverty-stricken people there on the Amazon River. And she said, Mom, it was hard. I mean, there were rats in our huts. We had lice. We had dengue fever. And she says, so many times I wanted to just go home. But she said, I remembered in our morning devotional on our mantle, there's a big picture we have of Mount Vernon. And she said, I remember at least once a week, you or Dad would point to that picture of Mount Vernon and say how George Washington didn't necessarily want to fight that miserable Revolutionary Year war or stay on another 8 years to be the president, but he knew God had a call for him, and so he stayed the course, and it made all the difference. And she said, at that time, I remember that story, and I knew that if I would just stay the course, it might make the difference to someone. And I would later go on to hear her say, mostly it made the difference to me. So I have a 23-year-old boy who played Duke basketball for 1 year. And he told me this story one time when he was just a little freshman, and he learned that they were going to play a game against the University of North Carolina, and he was told there were going to be millions of people watching. I mean, he had just come from his little high school, and now millions are watching him. He said, "Mom, I was scared out of my mind." And he's telling me this after the game. He said, "I got on my knees in my Duke dorm room, and I asked God to please help me to play the way I knew I could." And he had a great game. I'll never forget him when he was a rookie in the NBA. He plays for the Detroit Pistons. When he was a rookie, he would come out after games and he'd say, "Mama, I just got on my knees on the dirty bathroom stall floor in some of the greatest basketball arenas in the country," scared out of his mind because he was getting ready to play for the first time, going up against the likes of a LeBron James or James Harden or Steph Curry. And he said, "You know, Mom, I think the reason why I just have always felt like I just had to drop to my knees when I was scared out of my mind is because it was all those stories you told in the family devotional about the founding fathers praying." And he said, in particular, that one about George Washington and Valley Forge, when it was the bleakest, lowest point of the war, and he went out into the woods and he dropped to his knees and he said, "Mama," he said to me recently, "I know you thought I was sleeping through those devotionals, but I really wasn't." And so these are just some of the lessons that we teach. We talk about the power of the dinner hour, how we can teach our children, Capture the Sunshine, it's called, how we can teach our kids to love liberty and freedom through literature and poetry and music and art, how to teach our kids the Constitution, the law of the harvest, teaching our kids self-reliance and raising up the next generation of patriots. When mamas finish these 12 introductory lessons, I have seen it. I have seen it in their eyes. They begin to realize, wait a minute, I will be the best teacher that my children will ever have. I am the most qualified to teach them the things that will be the most important as we send those kids out. So I'm currently teaching a 16-week online Healing of America seminar with Vivian here. She's my behind-the-scenes gal. I couldn't do it without Vivian. So every Wednesday and Thursday, mamas from all across the country come online. The classes are just 1 hour. Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thursday nights, I teach with my husband, and that's kind of fun because we have husbands and wives and families on that Thursday call. It's sometimes good for a dude to see another dude teaching about freedom with his wife, And so the Thursday class is 7:30 Mountain Standard Time. They're free. They're 1 hour. I would really recommend go to momsforamerica.us and sign up for these classes. If you miss any classes, they're all recorded. You can get caught up. It's those Healing of America seminars that taught me really the bedrock of American history and the Constitution. And it's been such a joy to learn together with these mamas all over the country each week who are anxiously engaged in their homes and communities to make a difference. So now thousands of mamas over the last year have participated in these online cottage meetings. And every week they show up for the hour class, and then many times they want to stay on a half an hour later and talk about some of the things that are going on in their communities. And what they're doing is they have gotten this knowledge in them, and it's how the Lord has sparked them to make changes in their families, in their communities. I just talked to Sam from Pennsylvania a few days ago. She was halfway through the Healing of America seminar when an opportunity came for her to run for the school board. And she said, "I wouldn't have done it, Juleen, but as I've been studying with the moms and have been studying the miracles, how God was with people from the very beginning, Joan of Arc, Christopher Columbus, the Pilgrims, our founders," she said, "I realized God was a God of miracles back then. He's going to be a God of miracles now. I'm running for that school board." And guess what? She won. And she just told me the other day, "I started a little coalition with 3 parents. We are at 100 parents now in Pennsylvania, in the town that she lives in." I mean, I could tell you story after story after story of women that have come together and learned in the cottage meetings, either in their homes or online, and then how God has pricked their heart to rise up and do something. Dozens and dozens of moms almost weekly are reaching out to us wanting to start cottage meetings in their neighborhoods. Mamas, if it doesn't challenge you, it won't change you. And this is what we're doing today. We're challenging you, mamas, to begin to gather together, to learn, to study, to teach in your homes and in your communities. Alex de Tocqueville, that great author of Democracy in America, said women in their circle of influence, beginning in their homes, can turn the world around. Mamas, you are key. I always say mothers are God's secret weapon. When a wrong needs righting, when a truth needs preaching, when a continent needs opening or saving, God sends a baby into the world, to a simple home, to a little obscure mama. And then he puts an idea in that mother's heart, and she puts that idea into the baby's mind. And then God waits. The greatest forces in this world are not the thunderbolts. It's not the earthquakes. The greatest forces are babies. Mothers, you have a profound influence in teaching and shaping their character. And yes, even saving a nation. I don't know if you heard a couple months ago in April, Senator Tim Scott, he's a great senator from South Carolina. He gave the rebuttal speech to President Biden when President Biden gave his 100-day review. So Senator Scott told the most powerful story about his mama nationwide. He said when he was a young boy, his parents divorced, so his mom took he and his young brother back to grandma and grandpa's house to live. And they all slept in one bedroom. And as a young boy, he was angry, he was churned up. But he saw his mama faithfully pray during this time. And he said, it was her example that converted me to Christianity, and it changed my life, he said. He said, my family in one generation went from the cotton fields to Congress because the prayers of my mother. Mamas, you are the heartbeat of America, and it will be you that will anchor your family in hope. And when you're running to and fro and you're worried about their future, how do we stay anchored in hope? Well, I tell the mamas in our first cottage meeting, number one, you look to God for your freedoms. You don't look to the government or Washington, D.C. You look to God for solutions and deliverance. And then you teach your children that freedom comes from God, and you gather them together and you pray and you study the Bible and you armor them up so when they go out into the world, they know who they look to for the truth. Secondly, you keep that family close. You make family time a high priority. And I'm not just talking about more movies and shopping and bowling. I mean, nothing's wrong with that. But you take time to teach them the things that matter the most. I mean, I really think that's why I felt that family devotional in the morning was so important. And my Frankie, when he promised me, Mom, I really didn't sleep through the devotionals, even though my eyes were closed. I know he didn't sleep through the devotionals because when I go to his NBA games, he's the only kid out there with his hand over his heart when the national anthem is played. And he is taking this unique opportunity in his life at this time to stand for America, and it's because what he was taught in his home as a kid. Thirdly, I tell mamas, you've got to study the Constitution from the viewpoint of the founding fathers. Our biblical prophet Hosea in the Bible said, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. We can't let this happen, mamas. The United States became a great nation by following correct principles, and she will remain great if we know and hold fast to these truths. This is why cottage meetings are so important. I mean, that's where I learned there was 7 articles in the Constitution, and there were 27 amendments, and I learned what in the world they meant for me as a mother. I learned that the Constitution was written to protect families because our founding fathers knew that when you have strong families, you will have strong societies. And when you have strong societies, you will have a strong nation. So now when I go out to the communities and I speak to my kids' teachers and the school boards and out in the community and the legislative committees, I don't have to speak from fear or anger or emotionalism. I speak on principle. And I've learned that when you speak on principle, you will always speak with greater authority and strength, because principles are universal and they transcend parties and politics. So if you will do these 3 things, look to God for your freedom. Keep your family close and teach them these things, and learn the Constitution from the viewpoint of those who said it was struck off by the hand of God, those that wrote it, our founders. Then God will put into your heart the last thing to do, and that is to do something, to join a group, to start a group, to show up to the online cottage meeting, to start your own little cottage meeting in your neighborhood, to run for office, to support a good candidate. Maybe God will just tell you need some work to do in your home. Start having a little devotional. Start gathering your children morning and night for prayer. Maybe heal a relationship that needs some mending. God will put into your heart what to do, and it's going to look a little bit differently for every single one of you here today, but you will be amazed at the opportunities that will begin to present yourself. I always tell mamas, you just wait to see the miracles unfold in your life, because you're willing to say, Lord, here am I, send me. Teach me the things I need to know so I can go out into that world and be a light. Mamas, you are the future of America. The future is in your hands, and God has put you here for a reason today. He has put ideas in your heart, and now he is waiting. God has promised us in 2 Chronicles 7:14, if you will turn to my face and repent and turn from your wicked ways, I will heal this land. Now, God doesn't need a majority of mamas doing this. He just needs enough mamas doing this, because God, remember, he works through small and simple means to bring to pass his purposes. He knows we're going to be losing battles. We lose battles every day, but he just wants to know that enough of us are on that wall and we are willing to fight, because we know in the end who wins. This nation shall endure. God will prevail. God in heaven did not set up this first free people in modern times just to see it collapse into oblivion. As we do our part, it will justify the heavens to intervene and heal this land. And it will begin with one mama in one home with one cottage meeting in one neighborhood at a time. 10 small discussion groups in the community will do more to create a new way of life than 100 mass meetings with over 1,000 people in attendance. Mamas, in your circle of influence, beginning in your home, you can turn the world around. May God bless you and uphold you in this great work, and may God bless America. Thank you so much.